I need to do a little housekeeping, please. And you please turn down your volume. I need to know who has already purchased a book so I can check it off my list, because I'm down to one book and I want to make sure I didn't live. No, don't hold up your hands. Say your name, starting going around the outside.
Mary Lee Petesto, I have a book.
Okay, where did you sign it? You're at the end? Oh, yes, you are. Okay, so you've got. Okay, next. And I'm looking for where you signed up. You didn't sign, okay, well, in that case, please fill in the last line on the second, I'm sorry, second page. And while that's going on here, let's pass this around.
The pen fell off your thing.
What
Anyway,
pen?
this is Donald's money.
Oh, just
This is Donald's
right in
money.
there. That's okay, as long as he paid, he paid. Uh, Okay, Richard. Did you start passing this around? Thank you. You need to tilt that down some more. We're looking at the ceiling. Can you tilt the screen, this, no, the other way. Can you make it be more straight up and down? That's a little better.
Sorry. There's no pencil on here. I don't know
Oh,
if you dropped
oh, I
it.
don't think it had one.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, next, Barbara, did you get a book? You bought it and forgot it? Okay, well. What's your last name, Barbara? Trying to see where you signed in. There, I got you. Roberta Mackey. Okay. Debbie, did you buy a book? You didn't pay? I'd love to have the money, please. Okay. Sheila, you bought one, right? Sheila, did you buy a book? Okay. Where are you? There you are. And Sue, you bought a book? Did you sign in, Don? Did you sign up on the sign up sheet?
Yeah, I did. Long time ago.
Where? I know, but he signed up on this sheet, right? I thought you did too. I'm trying to find. Would you guys pass this down to Don? You got to get your name on that, Don, on the last one on the second page.
Did you have a sign-in sheet for today?
Yeah, it's right about over there someplace. Did you guys buy books? One book, okay. When it gets back, I'll mark you off. He just did. He's part of the club. I'm glad you got here for this one, Don. This particular chapter, I think, is probably one of the most important in the book. It has a lot to say about important things, and its topic addresses a broader set of issues than just one topic. Like the first one was pretty much faith, and faith was faith, but this one this goes beyond that. It opens the door up a little bit. Thank you, Don. See, you had to be on the chart for me to mark you off as paid. Thank you. Okay.
I thought they were wintergreen when I bought them, and here you go. There's only two missing. I grabbed them quick. I thought they were wintergreen. And got a surprise. They're hot. Spearmint.
Joy, you didn't sign this one either? Yeah, but I gotta have your name on here so I can check it off. This is getting complicated. You signed on, I know you did. You okay? Yeah. Because you don't have your normal happy look on your face. That concerns me. You sure? I don't want you calling 911 or anything. No, I don't mean don't call them. I said. That'll do it. This is getting better. Okay, Joy, and then Linda. Linda. Now, Linda, I was sure you signed up on this sign up list. I just not seeing that. I'm looking. Oh, there it is. 609-276. Then we got the Richard. You guys ordered one book or two books?
We bought two, but we didn't get them from you. We ordered them on Amazon.
Okay, good. Thanks. You gave me a couple extra books that way. And Peggy, where?
These are only by us. You got
yeah, okay. Glenn, well, he'll be here at the later group thing. He'll be here for, no?
He said he would. Yeah, I think it's still on.
I'm gonna go look right now. Anonymous, I hate anonymous. Oh, Carol. Carol is on there. See, when he goes on anonymously, I don't know that he's there. And it's hard to count that. Oh, well. Okay, but he paid for his? Glenn Mortimer. Okay. And I need to find you on this list somewhere.
I think I'm closer to you. I write real big, so my name is usually big.
Uh-huh.
Find me?
Okay. Oh, there you are. Second page right at the top. All right, I think I got everybody I need now. And I marked Glenn off, so he's okay. Oh. All righty. So for all those online, we're ready to get going. The text for this morning is Luke 12, 1-34. That's just the first large text we've had. In the meantime, when so many thousands of the multitude had gathered together, and they trod upon one another, he began to say to his disciples, first, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees, which is hypocrisy. Nothing is covered up that will not be revealed, or hidden that will not be known. Therefore, whatever you have said in the dark shall be heard in the light, and whatever you have whispered in private rooms shall be proclaimed from upon the housetops. I tell you, my friends, do not fear those who kill the body, and after have no more that they can do. But I will warn you whom to fear. Fear him who, after he has killed, has power to cast into hell. Yes, I tell you, fear him. Are not 5 sparrows sold for 2 pennies, and not one of them is forgotten before God? Why, even the hairs of your head are all numbered. Fear not, you are of more value than many sparrows. And I tell you, everyone who acknowledges me before men, the Son of Man also will acknowledge before the angels of God. But he who denies me before men will be denied before the angels of God. And everyone who speaks a word against the Son of Man will be forgiven, but he who blasphemes against the Holy Spirit will not be forgiven. And when they bring you before the synagogues and the rulers and the authorities, do not be anxious about how or what you are to answer or what you are to say. For the Holy Spirit will teach you in that very hour what you ought to say. One of the multitude said to him, Teacher, bid my brother to divide the inheritance with me. But he said to him, Man, who made me a judge or divider over you? And he said to them, Take heed and beware of all covetousness, that a man's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions. And he told them a parable, saying, The land of a rich man brought forth plentifully. And he thought to himself, What shall I do? For I have nowhere to store my crops. And he said, I will do this. I will pull down my barns and build larger ones. And there I will store all my grain and my goods. And I will say to my soul, Soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Take your ease, eat, drink, be merry. But God said to him, Fool, this night your soul is required of you, and the things you have prepared, whose will they be? So is he who lays up treasure for himself and is not rich toward God. And he said to his disciples, Therefore I tell you, do not be anxious about your life, what you shall eat, nor about your body, what you shall put on. For life is more than food, and the body more than clothing. Consider the ravens. They neither sow nor reap. They have neither storehouse nor barn, and yet God feeds them. Of how much more value are you than the birds? And which of you, by being anxious, can add a cubit to his span of life? If then you are not able to do as small a thing as that, why are you anxious about the rest? Consider the lilies, how they grow. They neither toil nor spin. Yet I tell you, even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. But if God so clothes the grass, which is alive in the field today and tomorrow is thrown into the oven, how much more will he clothe you, O men of little faith? And do not seek what you are to eat and what you are to drink, nor be of anxious mind, for all the nations of the world seek these things, and your Father knows that you need them. Instead, seek his kingdom, and these things shall be yours as well. The word of the Lord.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry.
I'm saying that. Is mine different than yours?
No, yours isn't different. I didn't mark my book. We'll add a few more verses here. Fear not, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Sell your possessions and give alms. I'm glad you remembered that one. Provide yourselves with purses that do not grow old, with a treasure in the heavens that does not fail, where no thief approaches and no moth destroys. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. The word of the Lord again. Again. All righty. Let's start reading and see where it takes us. Somehow the man in the crowd thought he could pull Jesus into an episode of the People's Court. He was a legal dispute over the division of the family inheritance with his brother, and he naturally wanted Jesus to take his side. But Jesus, often the holistic thinker when it came to earthly disputes, saw something deeper, more spiritual in the nature of the man's question. He took the opportunity to teach him, the observers, and all of us about the human propensity to worry about our possessions. Jesus responds to the man's question with one of his better known lessons involving the lilies of the field and the birds of the air. Few passages in the Gospels brings comfort quite like this one. Consider the ravens, God feeds them. Consider the lilies, God clothes them. And those sparrows that cost just a few coins, God keeps track of them. If God cares for ravens and lilies and sparrows, God most certainly cares for you. You might have turned to this passage amid your own hard times and anguish, just as countless Christians throughout history have done. If there ever were a passage in the New Testament that rivaled the comforting power of Psalm 23 in the Old Testament, surely these verses in Luke 12 would be in the running. When we read these words, we imagine placid fields full of flowers, singing birds happily nestled in their branches, and other creatures without a care in the world because God meets their needs. These words in Luke and the parallel passages in Matthew inspired songwriter Sevilla D. Martin in 1905 to pen His eye is on the sparrow. One of the most famous gospel tunes ever recorded. The song made famous by Mahalia Jackson and covered by numerous artists since. Was inspired by a couple named Mr. and Mrs. Doolittle in Elmira, New York. They were both longtime sufferers of ill health, with Mrs. Doolittle essentially bedridden for 20 years, and her husband confined to a wheelchair. Yet their spirits were indefatigable, which inspired Mrs. Martin during a visit to their house. When Martin asked the Doolittles the secret to their tenacity and courage, Mrs. Doolittle responded with a confident statement that alluded to Jesus' words in Luke 12:6. His eyes on the sparrow, and I know he watches me. The words to the song were born. Why should I feel discouraged? Why should the shadows come? Why should my heart be lonely and long for heaven and home? When Jesus is my portion, my constant friend is he. His eye is on the sparrow, and I know he watches me. His eye is on the sparrow, and I know he watches me. I sing because I'm happy. I sing because I'm free. For his eye is on the sparrow, and I know he watches me. Martin's lyrics offer an important reminder. Rather than long for heaven and home, for a better time or a better place beyond the miseries and suffering of this life, one ought to focus instead on the presence of God in the here and now, amid the struggles of today. That is an important adjustment to make when considering this teaching from Jesus. To be comforted by God does not mean we are removed from suffering, but that we are given new ways of seeing God's presence right in the middle of that suffering. Remember the context of this passage in Luke's gospel? When we widen the perspective on this text and consider the other teachings within it, we discover that these words of Jesus are not simply a kind of soothing, consoling salve for our brokenness. When we look at all of chapter 12, we see dimensions here that we are likely to miss, which change our perception of this teaching on sparrows, ravens, and lilies. When the chapter begins, Jesus is in the middle of a crowd of thousands upon thousands that had gathered so tightly that they were crushing each other. In other words, this was no tranquil seaside scene or some spacious knoll on a grassy hill. This was a congested, anguished, tension-filled, pressure-packed crowd. Jesus began his teaching not with soft-spoken, soothing consolation, but with a harsh indictment against the Pharisees. He calls out their hypocrisy, bringing to light their sinful actions and motivations that they prefer to keep hidden in the dark. Not exactly the best way to warm up the crowd for a comforting word. Then Jesus reminds his listeners that following him might cost them their lives. Staying true to their commitment might get them hauled into the synagogues before rulers and authorities, where they will need to make an account for their allegiance. They might even be killed for doing so. Not one of them is overlooked by God. Despite being sold for small coins, Jesus uses those words to exhort his listeners not to fear those who can kill the body, but the one who can cause suffering after death. It's as if Jesus takes the body's suffering as a given. If there's any notion that God's provision might mean the removal of our suffering, it's not anywhere to be found here. After that, Jesus doubles down on the randomness and futility of clinging to life based on earthly comforts when someone asks him to help him claim his inheritance from a brother. The parable of the rich fool is the story of a man who was concerned with trying to immunize himself from the hardships of life by accumulating more and more possessions, only to discover that he still cannot escape death itself. Fool, God says to him. It's not exactly the kind of rhetoric we'd expect to set up the comforting image of ravens, lilies in the following verses. And then what does Jesus say after verse 34? He offers more realistic descriptions of the darkness of the world. There is a parable of a master who comes at an unexpected hour to observe the behavior of the unexpected slaves. Those who were vigilant and faithful amid their uncertainty would be rewarded. But those who disobeyed their master's wishes, believing that the master was not watching, would suffer a brutal and lethal punishment. Again, the image of God. There is a far cry from what we would normally associate with the comfort of ravens and lilies. The chapter concludes with some of the most cryptic messages of Jesus. Do you think that I have come to bring peace to earth? No, I tell you, I've come instead to bring division. Father and son, son and father, mother and daughter, daughter and mother, in-laws versus in-laws, family versus family. Near the end of the chapter, Jesus rounds out this teaching by expanding his indictment of hypocrisy against not only the Pharisees, but also the entire crowd. Hypocrites! You know how to interpret conditions on earth and in the sky. How is it you don't know how to interpret the present time? So, let's review. In a matter of just one chapter, Jesus went on the offensive against the hypocrisy of the Pharisees. He told the disciples that the world would be out to kill them. He declared the futility of chasing earthly possessions. He reminded his hearers that bearing unfaithful and not being vigilant might bring about judgment. And he reiterated that he was here to cause division, not peace. And right in the middle of this long diatribe, we receive words that we have too often turned into a soothing lullaby about God's comfort and care for ravens, for lilies, and for us. When we look at Luke 12 from its high altitude perspective, we see that the comforts of God does not transport us away from the darkness of this world, but actually drills us more deeply into the midst of it. To consider ourselves as lilies and ravens does not mean that God will make life easier for us, for that may not be the case. Let's think again about Mr. and Mrs. Doolittle, who inspired Sevilla Martin's hymn. God was watching them, to be sure, but Mr. Doolittle was still confined to his wheelchair, and Mrs. Doolittle remained bedridden until she died. To receive the care of God does not mean we are lifted out of this world. Instead, it means learning to perceive God's presence and power in a new way, because it might not be readily visible to our usual ways of seeing. I'll highlight that one. That's really, really important. To receive the care of God does not mean we are lifted out of this world. Instead, it means learning to perceive God's presence and power in a new way, because it might not be readily visible to our usual ways of seeing. It's not about escaping this world. It's about interpreting the present time and seeing God right here with us and among us. Alison Gopnik, a professor of psychology at the University of California, Berkeley, wrote an article in the Wall Street Journal with the compelling title, "When Children Beat Adults at Seeing the World." After writing her book, The Philosophical Baby, in which she speculated that children might be more aware and observant of their surroundings than adults, she received many letters from readers supporting her claim with their own stories. One store detective described how he would observe patrons of the store from a high perch above the shopping floor. Grown-ups would be so singularly focused on the reason for their visit to the store that they would never notice him watching them from above. But their children would always glance up and wave. Unbeknownst to the adults, but noticed by the children. Someone up above was keeping watch over them the whole time. Gopnik then cites a research paper in the journal Psychological Science, which describes a condition called change blindness. You can show people a picture, interpret it with a blank screen, with a blank screen, and then show people the same picture with a change in the background. Even when you're looking hard for the change, it's remarkably difficult to see. Although once someone points it out, it seems obvious. Ohio State University researcher Daniel Playbank and Vladimir Slutsky tested this theory with two sets of people, adults and children ages 4 and 5. After showing each group a series of colors and shapes with subtle changes in the background, they noticed that adults were better than children at focusing their attention on changes on the key shapes in the center, those objects in their attentional spotlight, but were oblivious to subtle changes in the backgrounds of each image. Children, however, were able to see what was happening in parts of the pictures that adults were ignoring. Gopnik concludes, we often say that young children are bad at paying attention, but what we really mean is that they're bad at not paying attention, that they don't screen out the world as grown-ups do. Children explore, adults exploit. Sometimes by focusing less, we can actually see more. Gopnik's article suggests that what is important is not only what you're focusing on, but also what you are not focusing on. As you go through the harrowed busyness of your life, drowned in the competing worries and fears within and around you, are you focusing on those obvious stressors or the more subtle yet constant presence of God in your life? When Jesus talks about the comfort of God, he actually offers a challenge to see the condition of the world in such a way that we can notice the presence, activity, and provision of God in the midst of it. You might want to highlight that. When Jesus talks about the comfort of God, he actually offers a challenge to see the condition of the world in such a way that we can notice the presence, activity, and provision of God in the midst of it. We worry about the things in our lives we cannot see. We worry about things we cannot control. And sometimes we just worry about not being in control. Many times we simply worry for the sake of worrying. We worry about the future. We worry about our food and our clothes. We worry about our houses and how we fit into society. We worry about what we can't see. Jesus draws our attention to things we can see, like birds and flowers, and how they don't reap or sow or feed themselves. But somehow God cares for them. Because it's not just about seeing what's around us. It's about understanding how God provides and cares for all creation. That's another one you should highlight. It's not just about seeing what's around us. It's about understanding, and you could even underline understand as well, how God provides and cares for all of creation. This text reminds us that what is important in moments of worry is getting our perspective right. It involves a change in the way we see the world, God, and ourselves. With a few casual but critical references to flowers and birds, Jesus challenges us to shift our attention away from a future that we can't see to a present that we can see. Instead of worrying about the unknown, he is inviting us to seek the beauty of the known and God's activity in it. He calls you to see the incredible beauty and splendor of what God is doing in your life right now, which you are missing. That's another one needs some underlining, I think. He calls you to see the incredible beauty and splendor of what God is doing in your life right now, which you're missing. Essentially, Jesus calls us to exchange our crystal balls for kaleidoscopes. Oh, no kaleidoscopes, right? Okay, just checking. To stop trying to predict the future and to start seeing dimensions of today that we are prone to miss. Jesus challenges us to encounter dimensions of God's love, God's grace, God's work in our lives right now in splendid, beautiful Technicolor. Remember when that was new? It's more beautiful, in fact, than flowers in a field and feathers on a bird. It's as beautiful as life itself in all of its complexity, mystery, and glory. There's a popular sermon illustration told of a man who was seeking the perfect portrait of peace. Not finding one that satisfied, he announced a contest to produce this masterpiece. The challenge stirred the imagination of artists everywhere, and paintings arrived from far and wide. Finally, the great day of revelation arrived. The judges uncovered one peaceful scene after another, while a gathered crowd of viewers clapped and cheered. The tensions grew. Only 2 pictures remained veiled. As the judge pulled the cover from one, a hush fell over the crowd. A mirror smooth lake reflected lacy green birches under the soft blush of the evening sky. Along the grassy shore, a flock of sheep grazed, undisturbed. Surely this was the winner. The man with the vision uncovered the second painting himself, and the crowd gasped in surprise. Could this be peace? A tumultuous waterfall cascaded down a rocky precipice. The crowd could almost feel its cold, penetrating spray. Stormy gray clouds threatened to explode with lightning, wind, and rain. Amid the thundering noises and bitter chill, a spindly tree clung to the rocks at the edge of the falls. One of its branches reached out in front of the torrential waters as if foolishly seeking to experience its full power. A little bird had built a nest in the elbow of that branch. Content and undisturbed in her stormy surroundings, she rested on her eggs, with her eyes closed and her wings ready to cover her little ones. She manifested peace that transcends all earthly turmoil. The look of shock by the onlookers underscores our human tendency to only focus on the broad picture of our lives, not on the subtle but steady presence of God's peace right in our midst. This is the peace that passes all understanding. Peace that springs from the truth that God is powerful and God is present. A reminder from Jesus to consider the ravens and the lilies is a critical one for our Lenten journey. It is possible that it is the most important reminder you will need right now. It is not just to remember that God cares for you, but to actively notice ways that God cares for you. Then, just as plainly as you can see birds and flowers, you can pay attention to the signs of God in the present moment. For you, embracing the uncertain might seem shifting your focus away from all those foreground pressures, captivating your attention and looking for the subtle activity of God in the background. Rather than focusing on the torrent of the waterfall and the harsh spray of anxiety, notice the protective covering of God's wings that shield you even when you don't notice them. Ultimately, this is about raising to our constant awareness the fact that when we go through the toughest struggles, we can dare to believe that God is still at work. That work may not be fully revealed until later, but God is at work. even in the highs and the lows of life. We can believe that no matter what, God is in our midst. You can underline that one too. The Greeks had a word to describe this realization about time. It was called kairos. It means something like the appointed time. The idea of circumstances that are right for something. It conveys a sense of the richness and depth inherent in a given moment. It is not the kind of time that moves lifelessly onward in a sequential march of minutes, days, and years. If we have a kairos view of time, we have a realization that each moment we have might be loaded with meaning, including caution and hope and everything in between. There's one more way to say it. No matter what you are going through, God is always with you. You may not be able to see the fact clearly right now. You may not be going through struggles so intense that it's hard to see through the thick fog of your suffering, but that does not mean that God is not here with you. God is at work, moving in ways that you may not see now. The good news is this: God's activity is not contingent on our ability to see it. So you might want to highlight that one too. The good news is this: God's activity is not contingent on our ability to see it. I am so glad of that. That is, after all, how God often operates, just beyond our senses and our comprehension. But take heart, amid the cold, harsh spray of hardship, you are being cared for under God's protective, nurturing wing. When you see that, when you realize that, then you can sing, you are happy and free. Let's see what we can do here. I don't know what this is going to do to you, Carol, but I don't have a choice because I need to go over here. What I wanted.
With them children, didn't they really sing that piece? Now give it to them.
This is Ethel Waters. Anybody remember Ethel Waters?
And you know why they could sing it? Because he lives. And he lives within them. You know, 18 years ago this month, 1957 to be exact, in the old Madison Square Garden, I, Ethel Waters, a 380-pound, decrepit old lady, rededicated her life to Jesus Christ. And boy, because he lives, just look at me now.
She lost about 300 pounds.
I tell you, I'm modeling for him. I look good, and I know it. But I tell you, because he lives, and because my precious child, Billy, gave me the opportunity to stand there 18 years ago and sing at the old Madison Square Garden, His Eyes on the Sparrow. I thank God for that privilege 18 years later to still be able to say, with the help of these children, His eye is still on all us sparrows. All right, children, sing it. His Yes, it is. Don't you?
Love that voice.
There you go. Welcome now. So why should I feel discouraged? Or why should the shadows come? Why should my heart be lonely? Away from heaven and home. When Jesus is, He's my portion. My constant friend. My friend is He. For if His eye is on a sparrow, just think of a sparrow, then I really know He watches me. He watches me. His eye is on the sparrow. And I know that He watches. So I sing because I'm happy. Oh yes, I sing because I'm His eye is on all sparrows and children, darling, precious, loving, lovely children. I know, and how Mom knows on Mother's Day, that He watches. We and I know that He's watching me. See you in heaven. I'll be looking for you.
This revolutionary new
Oh, that was good. Makes me wish we had more stuff like that. You know, Lady Gaga might sing some good songs, but she can't get you like that. No way. All right, let's look at the questions. What are the ways in which you are beset with worry right now. Of those things that you are worried about, how many are things you can actually do something to change? Let's start with the first half. So, you get a volunteer, I'm going to start picking people because I know every one of you has got something going on in your life right now. What is it? What's worrying you this very minute? How long Father Paul will make this drag on?
Just sacrificing, making sure that all PR goes out on time.
Okay,
Really a squeeze and not having always the best of health. Interfere with it. That's my concern.
and the second part says, how many things can you actually do something about to change?
I do as much as I possibly can,
Okay,
putting in 200%. So
Okay.
it's not always in control regardless. You know?
okay.
Body does what it wants.
Whose control is it in?
You know,
Yeah.
So, but I don't know all the commissioners are going to really think of that when I'm in charge of PR and it's not out on time. They're not going to think about that as control.
Okay, so you're not just worried about getting it done, you're worried about what people will think about you if you don't. Well, no, that's okay, I'm just saying. But you got to add that in there. And then can you do something about the latter thing?
Of course, well, most importantly is getting it done so that we can be more successful and, and
Okay,
bring in the money and also, have a following and have, maybe some therapists will come. I didn't tell you everybody I was sending this to. Figured I could just take the ball on my own. Get some kids there.
oh, I thought you were going to say Hell's Angels. Well, they don't get invitations. However, if they were to show up, we would welcome them. That was the basis of my whole ministry in the beginning, is I welcomed 1% clubs, and then all the other clubs came because they said, well, if he'll take them, he'll take us. They learned a lesson. They saw the love of Jesus in action.
Fine line between what people expect of me and the fact that I worry about the church's overall outcome or how good people think it make. Fine line.
Uh-huh.
They're worried about the post office too. where they-
I thought I saw your hand go up a minute ago.
He went to all that trouble.
Well, the post office I'm not too concerned about right now.
When she started talking, I thought I saw your hand go up. No, Sheila.
No, I
Oh,
the only thing I would say to that is all that she's saying is actually, fact of life. But it's really in God's hands. That's the bottom line.
God's hands, if I don't sit there at the computer diligently looking things
Right,
up,
but
one
you're
after
doing
another, for hours.
Absolutely.
He's not gonna do that for me.
Okay, go.
So it's really interesting. We worry about things that are out of our control. And I want to tell you, the Viper thing is something that's gonna happen with or without you. And if God forbid something happens and Barbara can't do what she wants to do, somebody else will take over. So it's, well, I'm telling you that life is a day at a time. I can say about it. Life is a day at a time and a moment at a time. And what you're doing is what I do, and I'm sure everyone else does. We project into the future. And what happens if I can't do this?
That's business, that's how you run a business.
Well, actually, you run a business by trusting God. But you're not running a business, God is.
God wants us to use our talents and abilities
Right.
to bring about his ends.
Right.
And that does put a certain amount of responsibility on us. No, not the worry part. You're not supposed to worry. The doing part is what you're supposed to be doing.
Motivates you to make sure it's done.
Well, I I think we should trust God to do things in our life. I know we should trust God, and that's why I had you underline the things I had you underline. However, we have to realize that God wants us to do our part in whatever the thing is, not just sit there and wait with our hands crossed, our arms crossed. And so there's an element of patience, waiting for God, but there is also an element of effort to try and discern what God wants you to do in the action or the event, whether it's the bikers or whether it's services on Sunday or whether it's elections or whether it's anything else. God is in charge. God is, going to do his part, but he wants us to do ours. If we all sat home and didn't vote on election day, nobody would get elected. We wouldn't say, well, God's going to take care of it. He knows who he wants. He's not going to come down and say, yeah, it's you over here. You come over here and do this and that. We've got to do our part. We remember what I say a lot about we're the hands and the eyes and the feet of Jesus. We've got to be active. We can't be passive. We can be patient without being passive. In other words, to wait and look for what God wants you to do doesn't mean you don't do anything. Sometimes it's like Edison. You try a different element in the bulb every day until you get the one that's right. Now all of a sudden you say, oh, that's the one I'm supposed to use. That's what I'm supposed to do. We can try that in our lives. People will say, I want to be a reader. And they'll start reading and they'll come back and say, I don't like being a reader. That's okay. And then they'll say, well, I want to be an usher. And then they'll say, well, I don't like seeing what people put in the plate. And then they'll say, they'll go to another. And eventually they'll find a place, a niche where they are doing what they believe God wants them to do. They'll do it well, and they'll probably do it for the rest of their lives. But they wouldn't know what that thing was if they just sat back and said, you tell me. God doesn't send telegrams. I wish he did.
But Father Paul, what can you say to address Barbara? That she's worrying about something. She wants to do a good job. She's really bright. She's got all these great ideas. She's probably overwhelmed. What can you say to her to take away that worrying?
Well, I can't take away anybody's worrying.
And she believes it's appropriate.
It's appropriate. I worry, and once I've done everything that I can do to make it successful, then I wash my hands of it. And it is in God's hands, as long as I do take the steps necessary to do what I committed to do. If I get sick,
Well,
I can't help that, and I don't feel
Right.
guilty about that.
no.
Shouldn't.
Worry is sort of, we all have a
But
little
it's
motivator
the
of worry.
worry. No, that's not
But
what
it's,
God
I'm not
wants.
worrying myself into anemia or anything.
I mean,
I'm
doing what we have to do to complete an assignment from beginning to end. If we're in peace and if we trust God, there's no worrying. It's okay, God, this is what I need to do today. How do you want me to do this? And to be in peace about what we have to do.
Oh, I'm sorry. Didn't get a chance to poke in your brain. Next time.
Worry gives me the
Unfortunately,
adrenaline boost to do
it
what I
falls on
need
one
to
day.
do.
Oh,
Just today. I couldn't help it.
God bless you.
See you Sunday.
Yep.
Worry can be a positive thing.
No, it's a trigger.
Maybe Friday night, Stations of the Cross.
Um,
Try it sometime.
I know, I've been to them.
Okay,
I mean, not here, but I've been to them over the years.
okay.
I might.
I think I might do benediction this time.
Okay.
Yeah, have you ever been to a benediction?
No.
That's very, very sacramental, very liturgical. I wear special garb and we do a special service and we sing special
What
songs.
comes that? Friday night?
That comes immediately after Stations.
Oh,
Yeah.
so it's the stations and then.
We do Stations, then we have a 5-minute break and then we do, it's only a 5-minute service.
What
It's very
time
short.
does the station start?
I think
6.
that.
6 o'clock?
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Let me try and make it.
Thanks. Talk to you later.
And I'm worried about it.
That's what worry.
I know I can't really do anything. Can I? But yes, I can. Because I can pray. Yes, because prayer changes things. It always changes things. Either in the situation that you're praying about or in your feelings about it. So if you can go to God and say, God,
something terrible is happening. Help me. Find that peace or whatever you need to get you through that situation. That's how I do it.
Yeah, that's exactly what I believe. You know, and in the reading, it talked about things aren't always what they look like. Things are happening for a reason. We may not like it, and I don't like what's happening in Ukraine. I don't like the suffering of the people or the animals or anything. But I have to trust God, like, okay, if it's happening and you're allowing it to happen, it's happening for a reason. Something that I don't see is being worked out in the spiritual realm, and we don't see the spiritual realm. And that's a very difficult thing to do when you see people suffering,
It is.
right?
It is.
But the solution is not in
can't spend your
worrying.
day, I
What?
can't spend my day sitting in my recliner chair going, "Oh,
Right.
Friday, what's going on? What's gonna happen? What am I gonna do? What are we gonna do? What's, you know?
You
I
can't
think that's
compare
not the
the
right
worrying
thing
in
to do.
Ukraine to the worrying about whether the flyer looks like it pops and whether somebody's gonna open the envelope. Those are so
You have no
different.
control over it.
It's the same word.
Okay.
I should choose a better word for it.
Yeah,
Well,
it's not the
well,
word.
I'm going to have
What
that.
word it is, but what's it's not working.
What
You
I'm
have
doing
to,
is
was
I'm
driving
trying
towards to
be
get that
responsible.
decibel.
You know, I committed to something, so I got a list, I got a calendar.
Right.
I have a plan, and I have to fulfill that plan. And if I don't fulfill it, then you know, I feel like I let people down. And I did. If I had the chance and I sat around and did everything else up, then that I would have let people down. If I do everything I can do, I don't feel like I let people down. That was the will of God. But, you know, God's not gonna, he's not gonna produce, you know, different notes, he's not going to, you know, put the mailing together or contact the, you know, the newspapers, not gonna do it.
No, but he,
I have to do it.
So when you do these things, God is not present with you. You're all by yourself.
Well, you know what?
I mean,
I
God-
am, I don't know how to answer that because
God
I
gave you
live
the
my
ability
life.
to do those
Yes, I
things,
live my
and you
life.
took your ability and you heard what was needed, and you said, I think I can do something with this. And God's guiding you by you doing the work. It's not a worry.
So he's helping you with it.
He's saying, he's saying, you need to think about this, you need to write what you need to write, you need to contact who you need to contact, and do something about it.
Well, that's different.
maybe it's a concern.
It's
Like, maybe it's a concern.
Concern, that's
Not a
what I
worry.
think.
Okay, last weekend we had the corn you had. The first ones were, or, well.
They were all of you were worried.
We had only like 25 people sign up to start with for a long time, and we're not gonna be able to do this, right? Prayer. Now, suddenly, and be careful what you wish for, what you pray for,
Yeah.
because we ended up with, you know, and fortunately, we did have enough time.
Yeah, but who's that over?
And that's a lot for others. But it, now I forgot where I was headed.
We also had people.
It was a good example of worry though, and unless,
Right.
I hesitate to use it, but unnecessary worry. Worry that if you hadn't have worried about it, it still would have gone well.
Because in the long run, when you think about it, you're like, okay, well, if it can't happen, then it can't happen. You know, and it'll be fine. And if we don't, you know, if we don't have that many people, then I guess we just won't be able to do it. We'll do it another. Or we'll do another day. But and it is usually all of that, you know, it will put your concerns in the right order. And look at it and say, okay, look, if we don't get enough people, maybe we'll get enough people. And if we don't get enough people, it'll be all right. And if we do get enough people, we'll be able to do it. And hopefully Val will be able to help us. And if something happens and Al's not feeling well or something, Val can't come, we'll be able to figure it out.
It always, yeah.
And, you know, we'll get enough people to help us. All of these things will happen. So, and you're concerned about your things that you're working on. I think you have to sometimes let go of some control and know that, you know, if I can do this, if I can do that, or she's trapped, then someone else will come in and they'll help you. And they'll help cut the potatoes and they'll do all those things. If something came up and you were not able to do those tasks, they might not do it exactly the way you had planned. They might not do it exactly what you thought. But someone would step up
It
and
would
help
not have been
you.
done at all like last year.
Or it might not be done at all.
And
But
then
in
we would
the
have
end-
12 participants.
But in the end.
They were the best 12
it will
participants
all-
I'd ever
it
had.
will all- it will all of you well.
I think it all works out if you do diligence. I would
Well, of
go out and say,
course.
this is your responsibilities, and you figure out how to do it, and you manage your time. And so my mother's not there, would you be saying, well, it's Saturday, you didn't polish the silver or whatever task she had. However, I have that ingrained in me that if I took on responsibility, I am not going to do other things instead. And like when it comes to the dinner, to promote the corned beef and cabbage, you put a flyer out, correct? And I don't know, you put it out in another paper. Right, but that's a sign of there's zero. There's 12 names from last year, so that's the base mailing list for Blessing Request. That's all we have, 12 names of email addresses. Where I can't even make out the writing. I have a list now of like 75 people, bikes, bike clubs, dealerships, other people that I thought.
And you're doing a great job with that.
No, it's not that I'm worried about doing a great job. It's not the credit that I want. It's the success that I want. I want to have completed that task when I said I would, and I want to see an end result that's going to be beneficial, the overall benefit to the church. That's what I want. It's not for my own, thank you, you're so great.
I'm not saying that. That is not what I'm saying you're doing. And that is not what I'm going to put it.
No, I know.
So people would say, this is great.
But it was.
And that's us.
You're not in charge like others. That's the whole point.
You're not in charge.
You're doing his work.
I'm not in charge
He's
of
t-
now.
No, you're not in charge of anything. You are not in charge of anything. God is in charge of your life.
I don't think he's sitting there looking like, okay, well, I'll decide that Barbara's, no matter what she does with this mailing, it's gonna fail.
Okay. We're entering into a dangerous theological area, which will take too much time to discuss. Yes, Rich. I'm sorry, I was looking the other way.
I was in a position where I ran a camp for 25 years. When I was young, for say the first 10, 15 years, whatever, I did everything. When I got older and slower, and the camp got older, many more things needed to be done. And I could still do, but I was older and slower, so it took me longer and longer. So then I came up with an idea. I'll get a Thursday crew, so I made this Thursday crew. And all these volunteers came. And they did miracles there, really. Made everything right. So they all said, well, look what Rich done, blah, blah, blah. Rich didn't do nothing. All those people were sent by God. So it wasn't me.
Good job, though.
I don't know why that's
Because you're recently retired.
but it was, I had to learn, it ain't you, boy, it ain't you.
I agree with you completely, and as we get older, you have to do things differently.
And every
And
time
maybe the
I,
idea for this is to expand the group, so it's more on you as a worry. You may have been very, very capable in your youth, but then all of a sudden you get slower. And all of us have different needs.
And it seemed to me, whatever the topic was that came up, if I had some kind of major plumbing thing, a volunteer plumber would just come out of the blue and he'd be on my crew. Now, that couldn't be accidental.
And the other thing about mail, a lot of people now don't get their mail because everybody is on their computers. Everybody has their email. If you send out to all the email people, that would be cut down on mail. A lot of the mail isn't even being delivered. I don't know how many, you don't get everything that is sent to you. So, I mean, maybe we need to move in a different area to get the email out there to other people, to encourage them to have email and so
You
on.
can only get the email out there if you go onto their website and you get it, you can get an email or a phone number. If you get an address and you can't get an email, then you do that, or send messages to the different clubs, they don't want you to know their email. Telling them what I'm requesting, some sent back and said, okay, send it to me, some said, no. No, you can't, doesn't, it's not a list of
Okay.
email like Yellow Page.
Yeah, Debbie?
This is just what I feel. To me, worrying is worrying. Because I know people that could worry over that storm road with the same intensity as they would with the war in Ukraine. It's something you impose on yourself, whether it's how you were raised, your personality, and it is like really changing your perspective. And because you can't control everything, you can't change everything, and being able to trust God and let go. Because I mean, I've seen people that have literally worried themselves into an early grave over something that hasn't happened or may never happen. Not even present recently.
My daughter-in-law
I
has
didn't even know that.
this
She worried
anxiety.
about tomorrow because tomorrow may never happen.
Yeah.
My daughter-in-law has this anxiety disorder, and I really have never known anyone with that. And I didn't really know until after they got married, but, I mean, it's so severe. She'll be worrying 6 months in advance about at Easter basket and baby. I mean, she'll worry about things I would never think of in a million years.
Exactly,
She'll be
something
worrying
that
about.
hasn't even happened.
Mm.
And it's staying in the present. Like worrying about what we might have done a year ago or 10 years ago, worrying about something 6 months down the road, it's staying in the present. Because worrying can really hurt you, your health, your mental stability. I've seen it.
It can cost you a lot more money too, because you're worried about, well, this might break and this might happen, and, even with pets, like, someone who has that kind of anxiety disorder and they have a pet, they're always after that, I mean, it's a lot more than necessary. It's been eye-opening to me.
I've had a similar experience with a coworker or a friend or relative. It's downright debilitating and crippling.
Yes.
All right, let's skip down to question 3, because I think we covered question 2. Consider the words of the famous serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. How does that prayer connect to Jesus's command in this scripture passage not to worry? Yes,
The first word is God.
yeah,
God grant it. God do this, God do that. Our brains are nuts, but we got the Holy Spirit in us. That's in charge of everything if we let it, right?
it's like when you're questioning a politician, he says, I'll defer that to so-and-so, because he doesn't want to answer it because he knows he'll make a fool out of himself or lose voters or do something. And I think sometimes in our own thinking, we need to defer to the Holy Spirit. Let him take the flack if there's going to be flack. Let him do what needs to be done if it needs to be done. And he'll do it through us. It isn't like we're abdicating. It's just that we're letting him take the initiative.
God has a plan for our lives. before we were even born.
Yeah.
Every day, God has a plan for our lives. And if we just stop and say, what do you want me to do now, God? Because I suffer from depression. And sometimes I don't want to do anything, but I don't let that. I go, okay, Lord, what do you want me to do? And he sets me on a path, and before I know it, it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I've had a lovely day and I've accomplished what I'm supposed to accomplish because I defer to God. I'd be lost if I didn't do that. I have to defer to God so many times during the day. Please help me. Please calm me. What do you want me to do? Thank you for my blessings. You have to be talking to God all day, right?
St. Paul says, pray without ceasing.
Praying and talking.
Well, talking is praying.
Yeah.
That's the way we have discourse with God, is through prayer.
I mean, you know, I couldn't survive without that. I couldn't.
Mm.
I'd be very sick. I really did. Some kind of anxiety disorder.
Anybody else have any other thoughts on that question?
Part of the thing with that prayer, the wisdom to know the difference.
I could use a good portion of that, yes.
But where do you get the wisdom?
When you got the wisdom, there's always somebody says, look at the wise guy. It's all your relationship with God. And that enables you to do the things you need to do. That reassures you that you're doing the things that you should be doing. Oh, excuse me. Didn't sleep well last night. That's what very often gives you the energy to do what you need to do. You still do the doing. And if you, like I said, you can't stop and sit in a chair and cross your arms and say, okay, God, take care of things, because he needs us. He actually does. God needs us, because that's why he made us. So he could be in relationship with us, not so he could just totally be in charge and do anything he wants to, but so that he could involve us in his plan, involve us in his creation, involve us with caring for his creation, being the farmers and the veterinarians and all the things that he could do all that by himself. He doesn't need us to do that. But if he's going to have us fulfill the role that he created us for, then he does sit back and let us do what we're supposed to do. He doesn't take it away. It's like a parent who, when the kid brings the homework home, sits there and does the homework for him so they get it right and then sends it. Then he gets an A and then he flunks the final exam because he didn't have a chance to practice and learn. And then the mother gets upset and says, why'd you pass? I helped you so much with your homework. Well, yes, you did. God is a good parent. God is one who encourages us to be part of the process. God is the one who wants us to learn about the creation that he made. God's the one who wants us to decide how we're going to take care of things with his will in mind. And so worry in and of itself can never be a positive because it's negative energy. Worry could actually put you in an early grave. It could actually slow you down. It could actually turn you around. It could actually make you quit. It could make you do a lot of things. Concern is good. I like that word better. I think, what did you say that? You said use the word concern. I like being concerned. I'm concerned that this gets taken care of. That means I'm actively working on it. If I worry, it kind of takes it a step away from me and leaves it for somebody else to take care of. That's what worry does. We're all worried about the war.
The word worry is very everyday common word in our lives. We're always worried about this.
Somebody told me the other day how worried they were about the COVID, that it's going to kill everybody. I said, have you not noticed lately? They just took away the mask mandate. It's not that it won't kill anybody, but the flu won't not kill anybody either. In fact, in the last 2 months, more children have died from the flu than have died from COVID. Died, not just got sick, died. And we don't hear a word about that because, without sounding disrespectful to the children who died, it's within the parameters of what was expected. That many children were expected to die of the flu. And people accepted that and moved forward instead of worrying about how many kids are dying of the flu. They go ahead with, and then more kids get the flu shot and more kids get the things they need to do and things get better. And people aren't obsessing. That's a good word. Worry, not just worry, they obsess on something till it freezes them in their tracks. And they said, well, how do you know that? And I just turned my computer on, showed them the numbers from the CDC. And they said, well, nobody told us that. And I said, yeah. They don't want to tell you that because as long as you think you're going to die, you'll do what they tell you to do. But
A teacher, they used to tell us not to use the word worry. They would always, like if you're talking to a student or a parent, say, I'm concerned.
when I'm counseling people and pull them in without them asking me to counsel them, I'll say, I've noticed that your wife hasn't been with you for the last 17 weeks. Is everything all right? I'm not worried. I'm not even heavily concerned. I just noticed. And of course, if something's wrong, they usually talk right away. And that's because they want to talk. They're embarrassed to talk. They're not necessarily about the wife, maybe a diagnosis they've got cancer. They're afraid people won't want to be sitting next to them anymore or something. Could be any number of things. And when people get afraid, or maybe worried's another good word, they have a tendency to pull back from the issue and stop talking. And that means they've not only stopped talking to other people, that means they've stopped talking to God. You don't want God to know about it either. You don't want him to be disappointed in you. You treat him like you would a good parent. And you need to talk to God about everything. You need to put it in front of you. God, I'm concerned about the fact that I got this diagnosis. So I'm concerned about the fact that they said it's not treatable. Worse yet, I'm concerned they just told me I've only got 3 months left to live. Listen, no, you can't worry. It's in God's hands, remember? But you go to God and you tell him, and he'll spend time getting you focused. What do you hear on the movies when somebody's going to die? What does the doctor say?
Get your things in order.
Get your things in order. He immediately gives them a task. Not only does it take their mind away from the immediacy of the situation, but it also gets something positive done from the situation, which is now inevitably attached to them. And it's the same with anything else. If we know we're going to die, we should be spending time in the Bible. We should be spending time at church. We should be spending time talking to the people we love and telling them the things we've always wanted to tell them. Maybe not everything you've always wanted to tell them.
Word worry has a whole different, it's almost the same meaning, but it has a much more worrisome. If you say the word worry, sometimes your forehead wrinkles up in your, it's got a much more negative connotation than concern is more warmer. Almost like
I think we use them so freely, we don't even realize we're saying the word.
Right, that's true.
So even it may be concern and we're using the word worry. But like we were together, a few of us the other day, and two of us were talking about what was going on in the Ukraine, and one of us said, we can talk about it, but it's a negative thing, and God doesn't want us to be negative all day long. He wants us to have some joy, some happiness, and think about him as much as we may be thinking about what's going on in Ukraine. So, set us right on our tracks. But where we belong, thinking about God and the joy that he does give us, and the hope and the help.
Sometimes looking at the etymological roots of a word helps. If you go all the way back to the first time this came, the word was wer, W-E-R, and it meant to turn or to bend. When you're worrying, what's happening? You're being bent into a pretzel. Then it goes to Wergen, which was Germanic. Then it goes to the Old English, Wergen, Wyrgan, and that says to strangle. Then you go down to Wirian, Middle English, to slay, to kill or injure by biting and by shaking at the throat. I'm really worried.
But you sometimes say, hey, that's really got me by the throat.
And then it gets to the modern definition of worry: anxiety arising from cares and troubles, that being strangled and bitten to death. Yes. And that goes on. I don't think there's more, but the point is, if you look at the roots of the whole basis of the word worry up until modern English was that you're being attacked. Something is after you. Something's chasing you in the dark. Something's biting you or strangling you or shaking you or twisting you or, oh my God, think about it. That's where it comes from. That's the emotion that you have when you worry.
We don't think of it that way.
Oh, but you do. What am I going to do? Nothing can be done. It's all, someone else is in charge. Someone like Putin, and I have no way to change it. And the stress builds up and it strangles your breathing and it changes your heartbeat.
We understand that we can't do it. None of us.
Well, we can't do it maybe by ourselves, but I think first we pray, and then we do things like write letters to our congressman. Tell them what you think. We're so darn quiet. It's probably because we're being strangled. We're so quiet that they don't even know what we're thinking about. They have to take polls. Isn't that a sin? That to find out what your constituents think, you have to phone each one up and say, what do you think? It's not a happy scene. We need to be engaged if we're going to change anything. If we're going to get enough people to come to the bike blessing, we have to be engaged. We have to send them letters. We have to invite them. We have to call them up. We have to talk to them. We have to put posters up. We have to do all that kind of stuff. If we don't do those things, nobody will know and nothing will happen. If we want to stop the war in I'm going to say Afghanistan, it's been so long, Ukraine, then we have to do something. We can't just sit here and say it's a bad thing. We have to write our congressmen, write our senators, write the president, join a group, fund a relief camp. There's lots of things we can do. Somebody said to me the other day, we're not going to do anything for this place because we don't know what to do. I looked at him, I said, well, why don't you call up a Ukrainian church? I'll bet they got something that you can do. You send them your clothes, send them your money, send them your food. They'll know exactly where to send it, where it'll do the most good. They're going to make sure it gets there because they got family that's going to receive it.
We tried that. They don't want clothes, they want money.
Who?
The Ukrainian church.
Well, if that's the way they have to get it over, maybe they can't ship items the way they would want to. But the point is they'll know that. They're not asking you for money to support their church.
No.
They're asking you money to take care of what business needs to be done. Maybe money is what we need to do. Maybe we need to Sunday have pass the plate with a free will offering and say, look, we're going to send this money to the Ukrainian church to send over to take care of food and lodging difficulties in Poland.
And maybe more of it will get there than donate to the Red Cross.
I love the Red Cross in general, but when it comes to overseas things, the money never gets there. It pays all the people who are in charge. It pays all the people who do the transportation. It pays all. By the time you get it, 25% of what you gave gets to the people, and that's not good. But there's lots of other things that happen too, and there's scams. Don't just go on the internet and say, "Can I help you?"
Oh, God, no.
That's the worst thing in the world you can do. Your money will go nowhere for nothing. But there's always something we can do, and it's going to be directed by God. God told Barbara, you're great at communications and organization. Why don't you do this? And she came to me and said, can I do this? I said, yeah, go ahead. I didn't think a thing of saying yes, because I know what she's done before. I know her background. I know she's able and capable, and I know she'll get the job done, unless, God forbid, you get sick. Well, yes.
Also, my church in Manhattan, when I went, they were Christian, but they were very much into visualizing, it's important what you think and it's important what you say.
Yes.
And so, another tool that we can use that's Christ-centered is whatever we're concerned about, picture the outcome you want. Picture it being a success. I'm picturing the Ukraine restored, the people are back, and I'm picturing everything wonderful there. Because that sends out energy, that sends out love. It may not be happening in the moment, but isn't that better than thinking about all the negative stuff? So I'm picturing blessings. I mean,
Yeah.
look at Jesus with the fish and the bread, what he did. That came from visualizing God's abundance. We have to do that, we have to do that more. I have to do that more.
That's one of the reasons I like anchovies, is because of that story.
But
One of the reasons I like anchovies is because of that story
because of what story?
of Jesus. People don't realize it, but they weren't talking about fish. They were talking about fish. Fish that the kid got in his lunch, snacks. They weren't even big fish, and he still did the miracle. And so I eat a lot of anchovies. But it's somewhere between a what do you call it, sardine?
Sardine?
Somewhere between a sardine and an anchovy.
But the point is that Jesus visualized. Uh-oh.
But the pantry?
Yeah.
I don't have any.
You don't have keys to the pantry?
No.
No, okay.
Do you have keys to the pantry? Anybody have keys to the pantry?
The treasurer's office still have key vouchers, they run there.
He changed the locks quite a while ago.
Whatever you do, tell them, don't worry.
So, all right. Well, let me see if there's any other, yes, ma'am.
Can I backtrack to last week to forgiveness?
Last week,
Yeah, when we were doing the forgiveness.
we got to go forward.
When I got home,
Yes, go ahead.
I get these little books from.
Yeah.
And they give a great one out for that. Meantime, I got this one, and I opened it up, and the first page says, God forgive. Divinity blossoms where seeds have been sown, to forgive and then thus to be free of the grudges and pains, the wounds of conflict, which had frozen the soul within me. I call on the Spirit to help heal the sores. Seeds of forgiveness were sown, with water and sunshine, with oil, toiling and strife. Plants of good health were then grown. And as I forgave, the resentment was free. Regrets and deep hurts were unveiled. I patiently watched as each plant now buds would soon bring bright blossoms. New sale, and now in the green of the beginning heart, blossom of beauty galore. Await me there in my garden within. My soul once again was restored.
Wow.
I found that.
Yeah. That was worth going back for. Yeah. Okay, so we've got,
In front of you.
let's look at the next one. We're almost done. What can you begin to notice around you in order to help you recall God's care and provision? What can you begin to notice around you in order to help you recall God's care and provision?
I would say friends, people.
Church
They
family.
reach out to you.
Yeah.
Right, church family. Nature, just beautiful nature.
What about spouses?
I don't have that.
Who said that?
Bill
Well, you didn't say it loud enough. What are you, embarrassed? Well, God puts the people in our life that need to be there when they need to be there. I mean, some people I know get to a certain point in their life and they come to me and say, I'll never get married. I'm an old maid. How old are you? 23. Oh, don't worry, dear. What the ones that really get me are the ones that lose a boyfriend or a girlfriend. I'll never live after this. I've lost everything in the world. No one could ever be like that person was to me. You mean the one who walked away from you? Yeah, he's a. I was gonna say, if that's my wife, I'm in trouble. Hello? Excuse me? Speaking? Oh, I'm sorry. I can't even talk about that right now. I'm in the middle of teaching a Bible study. I thought that I recognized the telephone number. I'm sorry. Okay, that's all right. Not a problem. God bless you. Bye-bye. Anyway, where were we? Oh, God putting people in your life. And he does. And when you are a part of a larger group like the church, the chances of the right person that he needs to use to help you where in whatever you're doing is likely to be in there. You know, if you're walking through Grand Central Station, you've got lots of people, but I don't think too many of them are going to stop and say, do you need help? You know, but in church, people are alert to the other people. Like I said to you, Linda, you know, I said, are you okay? I'm concerned. And I really was. I don't want anything to happen to you. I like it seeing your church. You're very welcome. And so you express your concern and you try and find out if there's anything you can do. And in other parts of the world, or other parts of our life, rather, people don't have that same commitment to your well-being. In church, we love our neighbor, period. At least I hope so. You know, and so we know that the people there are concerned with our well-being. We don't even have to say anything sometimes, and people can lock in on something and offer to help. Or they might say, just in conversations, be talking about the fact that do woodworking is a hobby, and could I do anything for you around your house? Because I just need something to do to keep me busy, and then then you get what you need. You don't find that kind of thing in other parts. Even when you're members of the Lions Club, they weren't volunteering to help each other. They were more focused on outreach events and things like that, where they would help poor people or this group or that group or overseas or something. And but in the church, we care about people that are members, people that aren't members, people that live in our town, people that don't live in our town. We obviously are not concerned with their age. We are obviously not concerned with their race or their ethnicity or their political party. I know that's true because I hear some person say something about politics. And I say, don't you think that? And I think, okay, we got two groups here. But that's okay. It's okay you don't see the people that disagreed walking out of the church and never coming back, because we care about each other. We're concerned with each other's well-being. We want to be there to help, and we want to be there to share our understanding of things in life. That's all good.
What about outside the church, though?
Same thing. So like when you take somebody and buy food for them if they're hungry, like I told you, never give them money, never give them money, never give them money.
As an individual, like for instance, in my daily life, what can I be notice around me in my everyday life that will help me recall God's care and provision?
The homeless person on the street, the hungry person, or the panhandler that you give an opportunity to eat should remind you that God cares for you as he's caring at that moment for them through you. Remember, we're his hands and feet.
So just a very, very short.
Thank
I
you.
say too much. I got tumor someplace else, it wasn't helping. And God puts in my head, research it. And I found out something about turmeric that I didn't know. And this particular brand didn't have it. That's how God helps me.
Well, that's legitimate.
You know, little things, little things.
He moves you to do what's necessary to get the task accomplished.
And I learned from Lois, who hasn't been here, that you're supposed to take iron on an empty stomach. I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah.
Since I started doing that, I've had much more energy. It's the little things. It's not just doing for others. It's like how God helps you and tells you things during the day that you need to know.
Yeah, well, if you're healthy and in good shape, you're much more able to help others in general, not always, but in general. This person that was in the bed for 20 years with a husband in the wheelchair for 20 years, they were able to help by their example, by their tenacity.
That's amazing.
Well, I saw something exactly like that when I was in Camden for 2 years with the team ministry there. And there was this gentleman, I can't remember his name. He had a wife who was bedridden. She had brain cancer of some kind, and it was terrible stuff. And nobody wanted to take care of her. None of the nursing homes wanted to take their house away and everything else just in order to get enough money to take care of them. Government wanted to do the same. Husband told his wife he would stay by her side till the day she died. And they put a hospital bed in the living room of the house. He did her tube feeding. He changed her diapers. He did her IVs. He did everything all by himself. The only thing he didn't do, he had a nurse come in periodically to change the IV site so that, actually into the vein. I forget what they call that,
And how
to
long
pick.
did that go?
Oh, 15, 20 years at least.
Oh, my
It was the kind of cancer where when it's done doing what it does, it stops. But you're still have a disability. And it was terrible. But he used to, when people would come in to visit, he'd bring them over and he'd say to her, what was her name? I'll never remember. But he'd say to her, say hi to Father Paul. And she'd just stare and she'd be, and he'd say, well, I guess I'm going to have to get her going. I said, go right ahead. And he'd look at her and say, aren't you my little Dago? And she'd say, I'm not a Dago. I'm a good Italian girl. And then I'd have her attention. She'd look at me and I'd see her look at me and I'd see her smile or maybe say yes or no to me. But you had to get the jump start there. But for all the time that it took for her to die, he took care of her. And only time he'd leave her side was to go to the grocery store. And he always did that quickly. He never went off somewhere else, never had any side trips. He'd get the food and bring it back. And his example showed us a true example of what unconditional love is. He gave 20 years of his life in order to care for her for the last 20 of hers. And he gave her everything she needed, and he loved her, and he encouraged her. That's something I noticed in here. What is a word they used a lot in this chapter? Comfort. Comfort. The word comfort came up at least a half a dozen times in the 10 pages. And I'm asking myself, I hope they're translating this right, because comfort means what? Encourage. Comfort is not a slowing down. It's not a calming down. It's not a resting. It's exactly the opposite. It's a moving forward. It's a pushing forward. It's getting energy into something and getting them going in the right direction. So when you read this again, if you read it again, but I would suggest when you read it, and every time you see the word comfort, say, what if I put the word encourage there? How does that change that thought? Again, know your etymology. If you know where the words come from, and you know what they meant before they got to where they are today, you'll know what the impetus behind the word was. In America and in English in general, we tend to soften things. We come up with new words that are just like comfort. Comfort means, to calm down. We don't want them to get upset and excited. Well, no, that's nothing to do with it at all. It's exactly the opposite. What was the other one they just had in here? I forget what it was. But English tends to soften and generalize, you know, the words so that they mean kind of anything you want them to mean, you know, and the woke culture does that a lot, you know.
What culture?
Woke,
Woke?
WOKE. You're not familiar with the woke culture? Don't ask me now. See why there's not enough time. But the woke culture does that. It changes the definition, literally changes the definitions of it. Look at what they did for COVID. It's called the COVID vaccine, right? And everyone kept saying, well, it's not killing the virus. It's not keeping us from getting sick and catching it again. It's not. They said, well, that's not what a virus is. It is too. Look in your CDC thing. And in the CDC, it said a vaccination is something which, once treated, causes you to be immune to the virus. You know what they did? Rather than fix the vaccine, they changed the definition of virus. I mean, they changed the vaccine. They changed the definition of the word. Now it says anything which lessens the effects of. Well, that's not what it ever was before. Boy, if I got chicken pox or measles and I got the shot, if I ever got chicken pox or measles again, I go complain to the people, hey, I got sick again and I shouldn't have. There's a lot of stuff that goes on in modern society, which uses language as a tool to misdirect, to dissuade, to correct you to their way of thinking, whatever it happens to be, by changing the definitions of words. You know, and that's not right. What is the difference between peace and comfort? How can we experience peace that surpasses understanding even in the absence of comfort? That's an interesting one, because if you put encourage in those places.
And Jesus says, my peace I give to you, my peace I leave with you. He didn't say my comfort.
Peace is precisely what it means. Peace is to be at peace.
No matter what.
Right.
Exactly.
But comfort is necessary. What does it say in the Old Testament? Comfort ye my people. But they were in the diaspora. They thought the world had come to an end. They'll never go back to Jerusalem. Their enemies have control over them. They're taxing them to death. All these things are happening. And what's the word come from the prophet? Comfort ye my people. Encourage them. Get them to start thinking. Get them to know that God's active in their life.
But it's interesting because he's saying, what is the difference?
Peace is the result of God's presence in your life. Your soul is at peace. But God comforts you, encourages you to use that life that you are now calm and understand comes from God to his purposes. You have to be motivated and pushed out into the world to get things done.
With comfort. So, because, of course, you look at the word comfort and you go comfortable, Is that what he's?
When you look back in the Old English, the Knights of Columbus, Knights of the Round Table, Knights of Columbus are good people.
He's not doing that. He's saying, he's using comfort in the human way, because he's saying here, how can we experience peace that surpasses understanding even in the absence of comfort? So I think he's referring to comfort here, like, we all want to be comfortable because we don't want to worry. I think he's saying, how can we experience peace in the absence of comfort? I don't think he's using comfort the way you are.
We are encouraged to be at peace by God. And so
But
if
that's not what he's saying. I think he's saying, no matter what's going on in this world, you have the ability through God, through Jesus, to be at peace. Doesn't necessarily mean you're going to.
Bye, Barb.
I think it's the same as what Paul says, his surroundings are.
It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be comforted, but you still can be at peace. That's what I get.
I don't think you can have peace without God's comfort. Because without the comfort is to move us to action, which is what brings us the peace that we know that we're living in the guidance and direction of God.
I was
But
thinking,
that's not what he's saying.
Well, I don't care what he's saying.
My question to you is, let's forget about it, look, my question to you is, how can we feel the peace of God without having comfort in our lives, with having physical challenges, emotional challenges? I think that's what he's saying. How can we have peace if we're in situations that are difficult? Because the thing is about worry.
The peace has nothing to do with the situation. The peace has to do with our relationship to God.
Exactly.
When we are, when we are at one with God spiritually, when we are in communications with him, when we understand that he's the one that's ultimately in control, when he's the one that will make all things wrong right in the new world, in a new life, and so on and so forth.
So that means that no matter what, everything in our lives really depends on our relationship with God.
Yes,
Everything.
we started off that way.
They did not comforted, they did not have comfort.
I know.
But they had peace.
They had peace.
They had peace, but using my definition of comfort as encouraging, they were being encouraged. They were being encouraged that there's going to be something better in the future. There's going to be, you will be paid, you'll be rewarded for your trust in me. You'll get the things that you will walk again, you will talk again, you will, like the man who had the woman with the cancer, your mind will be restored. These are all things which motivate us. We're going to have to stop now.
when I see this, I think about Paul when he was in the dungeon of prison.
I've never been in prison.
They'll sing songs and
Oh, yeah.
he's gonna be at peace with his condition. He's not gonna be, worried about it.
Same thing with St. John the Baptist.
They're ready to cut off his head and he's good.
Oh, God.
I'm peaceful with that. I got no problem. I'd rather go with the Lord.
Just don't have to swing more than once. All right, let's go to the end here. Says take some time. This is your homework assignment. Are you guys doing your journal stuff?
Yes.
Okay, please do that because this is important. It'll keep you thinking about these things. Take some time to reflect in a journal about the many ways that God has provided for you throughout your life without your seeing or acknowledging it at the time. In other words, look back on your life and write down, God was there then, and I didn't know it, not once. I didn't think about it. I didn't care. I had my own agenda. Okay. Be thorough. Think about even the tiniest blessings that you could not have achieved on your own or merited by your own achievement. Consider this list to be your Lily and Raven list, which you can refer back to and add to as you go through episodes of worry. Okay. So you're going to do your journal and you're going to remember all the times that God was there and you didn't realize it and you figured it out afterwards. The Lord be with you. Let us pray. God, I thank you that just as your eye is on the sparrow, your watchful, caring gaze is always upon me. Grant to me the ability to see in the middle of my difficulties that I might not be so fixated on my troubles, but observant of your unfailing grace and love. Amen. Boy, that was a lively discussion. I want to thank everybody on YouTube that was with us. And if anybody's hiding somewhere in the background on Zoom, well, they could be on the phones. They could do the other ways, but we'll be back tonight at 5 o'clock to repeat this exercise. I'm worrying. And we'll be back again next week at the same time for the next chapter.